Guys, and welcome to the Death Chicks. We are live, and we're so happy that you're here. This is our take 2, and I'm live right away, Patty.
Yep.
Burgess, my wonderful host, and Rachel Archelaus. We have a medium here with us, and we have Roland Takaoka. And we are live. This is take 2. What is death? We're going to launch right in. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is February. It's our big question series. We're the Death Chicks, and we're here to talk about death. So if you're still with us watching live, thank you so much. We had some technical difficulties. If you're watching from YouTube after the fact, we encourage you to follow us. We're all about having the conversation, so when we get closer to the end of life, we feel empowered. So here we go. Patty, if you want to say a quick hello, and then we're going to launch right into asking our guests, what is death?
Yeah, absolutely. As we were saying earlier, this is a big, broad question, but we don't want to limit it, so that's why we're bringing it up in a big, broad way. And we know that each of our guests has different perspectives, and we want to hear all about those perspectives. Some of them may be religious, non-religious, spiritual, philosophical, whatever it happens to be, we want to hear about it. So what we'd like to do is start with Roland. Roland does have, we were leaving him hanging a little bit earlier because he had this genius response to the question, what is death? And now he's got to come and recreate that genius. I don't think it'll be hard for you, Roland. So tell us, what do you think death is?
Hi, Patty. First of all, I want to thank you and Misty for inviting me on the show. And Rachel, has really been fun getting to know you, too. But death is the type of thing that is very controversial. And it can't mean anything until you determine what your angle and your view on life is. Because if life is just a little thing on a timeline from point A to point B and that ends right there, then I consider that a stop sign. And people look at the stop sign and say, I don't want to stop living, but the opportunity is to recognize when you get there that you stop, indeed you stop, but it's actually a transition because you go past the stop sign and then something carries on after that. Now, we can't prove that as human beings necessarily, even though some people do feel that they do have proof. But the main thing is that if we look at life from the standpoint of spirituality, and if we are spiritual beings as well as human physical beings, then we have the opportunity to look beyond our physicality. And if we are spiritual beings, then we're simply out there as spiritual beings right now, living life as a human for a brief point in time. And I'm sure that a lot of people have philosophies that emulate the same thought. But basically, it's just a transition. It's not an end to anything. It's a transformation. And when we get there, we're going to see life substantially different from what we do as human beings.
Absolutely. That was just as brilliant.
Well, not really.
There you go. Well, thank you. And we want to move over to Rachel. Rachel is a medium and an intuitive artist and art teacher. As we introduced earlier on the show that kind of got bumped, Roland is also the eternal optimist. So death to him is just a stop sign. What the heck? You can turn right, you can turn left, you can keep going. Perhaps you'll ascend at that stop sign. I don't know. Maybe that'll be what'll happen. Transform, that's right. And Rachel, tell us, your experience is also very different, and I knew you had a very different take when we asked questions the last show. So what is death?
So I totally agree with Roland in seeing it as an extension. So kind of like water has different phases. You know, water can be solid, just like we are here. We have bodies, but it can also be in that mist or evaporation state where we don't really see it, or it's kind of see-through. It can be clouds. So it has a lot of different phases where sometimes it's solid and sometimes it's not, but it still exists, it's still real. I've just had so much experience where I've interacted with people after they've passed on, and it's the same thing. So sometimes I can hear them and I can't see them. Sometimes I can see them, but they're a little bit see-through. And so I just feel like when we die, we do transform, like Roland's saying. It's a different experience. We don't necessarily have a physical body, but we get to explore this whole new avenue of living. So we're still living, it's just in a different way. And it's great for the most part. Everything I've experienced is a positive thing on the other side. The biggest thing that happens to me when I go to a funeral or a wake is the deceased person in spirit is like jumping up and down saying, I'm okay, and they just want us to know that everything's fine. So that's kind of my take on what death is.
Isn't that interesting?
Sweet.
Goodness.
I was just going to say that may alleviate some of the fears. And the next question I have comes a lot from the major religion that I grew up in and that many people grew up in, and that's the question of sin and the idea of hell. And I think many people fear death perhaps because of this reason. Would you care to comment on that, either of you?
Yeah. Sin is really, first of all, it's a psychological thing. I mean, I don't think it's a real thing, as in something concrete. Well, maybe any more than our physical bodies are that concrete after we pass. But the concept of sin really has more of a social and cultural context than it does anything real. And when we say this sin, it's like a differentiation between what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, and a polarity issue of what is going to benefit mankind and yourself and mankind, and what is not going to be beneficial or is not going to be good. And it's kind of our way of sensing or being able to sense, actually, as a thermometer or some kind of a monitor, what we should do or what we want to do versus what is wrong and it should not be part of our desires. And that becomes a very, very deep subject when you analyze desires and what people want and what people think. But basically, sin has to do with what the people, the general public and culture, decides what is right and what is wrong, and they group polarize in the various concepts, and that leads to a lot of problems too, because when you discuss sin is different for everybody. When you talk about sin, actually the word sin, I believe, is a Latin term for being absent or going wrong. Being absent, it doesn't mean you've done something terribly this or that, but it just means your presence in your actual higher self is missing from your action and missing from your thoughts.
Isn't that interesting? I heard something similar, that sin was translated back into missing the mark or error.
Yes.
And missing the mark makes it feel so much less heavy than, even those of us who have pulled away from traditional religion to move more towards a spiritual kind of practice, still, I think, have grown up with that word. I know I grew up Catholic, and that had very much meaning, and it actually was a thing. Like it was a thing, and it was a mortal thing and a venial thing, sin, and there was better ones and worse ones, and keeping track and all that kind of thing could get kind of confusing, and the understanding around that for kids especially growing up could get really tough around that. But I agree with you. I think that in general it was placed into being to help people live in a civilized way together, not hopefully where a lot of people have taken it now.
Well, when you add the concepts of sin to a group fear that we can do wrong and hurt each other and stuff, and you get defensive, then that reshapes our thinking to what we're going to assign to sin and what we are going to do about the sin if we sense sin. And so that becomes an additional quandary. But the concept of sin and the absence concept, I like that because it parallels when people say, "Oh, he's not in his right mind," or "What were you thinking?" And you're basically not in the place that centers you with your spirit, which is in contact with this higher self, inner self, the goodness, the joy, and the love, all those things. And if you're out of touch with that, and you're not thinking from that source or being in touch with yourself, then you are not yourself. You're this other person, you're living in fear, and you're going to sin by nature, and you're also going to be fearful of sin.
Interesting. Thank you, Roland. I'm curious what Rachel has to say about this.
Yeah, I agree. You know, sin, S-I-N in Spanish, is without. So without your spirit, without your true self. And, you know, I think in a large part, religion has used it to control its people and to, you know, it's a construct that they're using to make sure that their people are doing what they want them to do. And in my experience with, you know, those who have passed on, and hell and all of that, I haven't found any trace of hell. And I think that when we go back to the original biblical term, you know, heaven and hell, there was a lot of, I guess, misuse of that too, where, like, really heaven and hell is what we create in this lifetime. And so if we are acting in sin without our spirit, we can create our own hell here on earth. And I have not found anyone going to hell in the afterlife at all. There are some times where spirits will cross over and have some seclusion time where they'll spend some time alone, reflecting on their life, recuperating before they join their friends and family and stuff. But it's more just like a nature retreat where you're getting to,
like that.
You know, yeah, like just come back to yourself if you've had a really hard life or you've done things that were harmful for yourself. But it's in no way mandatory or hellish or anything like that.
You know, I'm curious. You both have a very, what I would call evolved, sort of esoteric, non-religious based belief system that didn't just spring up overnight. What informed your, you know, some people are here because they turned away or had some very bad experiences. Other people, maybe good ones like you, Rachel, I don't know, happening to see a ghost walking by might have changed a perspective as well. What informs your beliefs today, and what brought you to these particular belief systems? Rachel, you want to start?
Sure. So I grew up Catholic just like you, and I went to CCD in church and everything. And I remember when I was like 9 years old, I was in CCD and learning about the devil and temptation. And they were saying that, you know, you never know what temptation is and where the devil will come and try to, you know, make you do bad things.
You just can't figure that out, can you?
And I just said, well, how do I know this isn't a temptation and that this isn't the devil? And I was totally honest. I wasn't trying to be a wise ass or anything. But it's true. Like, if they don't teach you in religion how to connect with your true intuition, and so without that, how would we know what is temptation and what isn't? So it just didn't make sense to me as a little kid. And I did have a lot of experiences with ghosts and angels and all sorts of stuff. So
could you bring that up if you went to Catholic school? That was something, did you inherently know, oh gosh, this is a little dicey to bring up, I shouldn't, it'll be dangerous if I bring that up?
Yeah, I didn't say anything at all because they,
the devil,
at the same time, like, they were saying that, you know, we're drinking the blood of Christ, we're eating the body of Christ in these wafers and stuff, and that's pretty metaphysical, but they're also saying that ghosts are like evil, and so it just didn't make sense. And kids are really smart, you know, they get this stuff, they see the contradiction. Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how broken people can get. I know my father was a Catholic. I'd call him a pissed-off Catholic of the 50s and 60s, and because it was pretty harsh then, and it wasn't the same, you know, like everything else. I think religions evolve too, and maybe a lot more slowly than the rest of culture, but there's evolution. And you know, I remember him having a really hard time with the fact that he went to the priest to say, can his father eat meat when he had anemia, and they said no, and when his father died, they told him he didn't pray hard enough. What confusion. And yet some people take to that and live a life of guilt and self-flagellation and all that kind of thing. Other people say, I'm just walking over here, and I find that fascinating. Those who live in a very guilty scenario for the rest of their lives, or those who just trust themselves. I wonder what that mechanism is. I wonder what that difference is. I don't. It's really more of a rhetorical question, but if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Sure, I can chime in on that one.
Good.
First of all, the concept of guilt. My theory is that guilt has, well, once you realize you've done something that you would prefer not to do again, or that that would classify as wrong, so to speak, and you realize exactly that, oh, I would never do this again, whatever. After that point of recognition and acknowledgement, guilt absolutely serves zero purpose. It has no purpose whatsoever if you have adjusted your lifestyle and it changes what you do. And what people do is they say, oh, I'm guilty, that makes me a bad person, and that should carry over into the next day and the next day and the next year and so forth. And they keep looking backwards to what they were on a certain point in a certain day and saying, I'm still that person, which is it's a flat-out lie. You've transformed since that point, so you should give yourself the credit to be able. With human beings, one of their greatest assets is that we can change, develop, learn things, and become who we are right now instead of who we were yesterday. So I don't give a lot of credit to guilt.
Yeah, if it were productive, we should do more of it, right? But,
Yeah.
But it's just not productive.
Yeah, well, it's just a steering mechanism for changing the way we think.
That's a good
I
point.
think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, yeah. But when we're in that feeling, it's heavy, and it's not connected to the love and light that I believe we all have access to. And I guess part of the challenge as humans is how to stay out of the fear and how to shift and be operating in the love or in the light or with God or however you want to frame that. Yeah, and I'm just bringing this back around to what is death. I'd like for each of you to answer that kind of metaphorically. So there's the physical death, but let's talk about some deaths we might experience in our daily lives and how we could use that small instance of death to help us become comfortable with the physical death.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
That's a great question. It's actually something I think about a lot because I like to have my life be current. I like to know myself as I am right now, what I want to do now, and I try to clear out everything else from my life. So, for example, we all have a house full of stuff that maybe we don't even want anymore, maybe we don't like, it's not serving us, so I physically declutter all the time to get rid of the remnants of my old life. I do the same with files on my computer. Like, I don't keep old stuff from college, my old papers, I just delete it because that's not me anymore. So I die a death every day, every moment, and I only bring with me who I am right now. Like Roland was just saying, how it's no point like looking back and looking at ourselves as that guilty person. You know, that's what he's talking about, is that we evolve every day, and we can use our environment to reinforce that so we feel the energy that's accessible to us in the moment.
Oh, that's so brave. That's so brave. And you should really go in. You know, they have organizers. You could be like a spiritual declutterer that shows up and takes care of the physical. I truly believe that, and I've got a whole attic full and basement full that needs some attention, or at least doesn't even need the attention. It just needs to go, because
feels so good.
Yes, and doing that, just even taking like a morning and going through emails, it feels so good. It feels so amazing, and it can get actually pretty addictive too. It really can. It really can. Wonderful. You know, Roland, did you have any thoughts about Misty's question?
A bunch of stuff. She made some really good. She made some really good statements there, and I wish I could just replay it all in my mind so I could catch up to what I was going to say back when I was listening to her. But when she was talking about, Yeah, well, the one thing that I remembered is the decluttering, and I equate that out to the same thing that psychologists call baggage. And I also equate it out to the thing that so many people with the new age concepts of helping people and counseling refer to as the process of letting go. Because we're talking about all the same stuff here. The stuff you have to let go of is the baggage that you can't get rid of in the history that you can't forget. And when you hang on to that stuff, you're dragging yourself down and you're staying out of the flow of life. Whereas if you just let go of it because you say, okay, I understand what I did, I understand what so-and-so did, now let's go forward differently than we would have if we didn't have the understanding. So you walk forward. You do what Jesus says, turn the other cheek. You turn towards the light. You let go. And when you do this, you start living life in the now instead of living in the past or worrying about the future, which is not living in the now. And it's not being present, and that's basically what sin is all about. You're living an absent life, and if you're doing that, you're living in sin. So if that's the case, life and death are synonymous with the experience of existing, and it's just a cycle. And when we get to the point of being in the higher end of the cycle, when the pendulum swings and we find ourselves past that stop sign or past that point of death, we're going to look back and say, oh, now I get it. Okay, let's go do it again.
Beautiful.
You know, I've read a comment from one of our viewers, Jay Neal, and I'd like to share what he says. I've put it out there for our viewers to ask questions, and this is interesting, so I'm going to read this aloud and allow our panelists to comment. So Jay recently had an experience where he was supposed to not pull through an unexpected illness, which hospitalized him for 30 days. Then he says, I had an odd dream where I was being sunken into the bed and landed on a beautiful beach in which I didn't want to leave. On this beach, there were staircases which I chose to go up. The rest I don't remember. But it was after this dream that I started to get better. For a non-religious person, this was very odd, and I've been struggling with the question as to why this dream happened, as if I had consciously made a choice to live. And he says that any insight would be appreciated.
Very interesting. One of the things that struck me about what you read is the sinking into the bed. And if you read any of, I would highly recommend Bill Buhlman or William Buhlman, B-U-H-L-M-A-N, who is an instructor at the Monroe Institute in Virginia, which is not only a research facility but a place where people gather to study out-of-body experiences in not a airy-fairy, new agey way, but in a very grounded way. And much of the out-of-body experiences that I've read about with his books and with other accounts has to do with a sinking down. In fact, even in other cultures, it's more of a sinking down. We think of out-of-body here, well, when we think about it at all, if we think about it at all, as sort of a rising up. But that sinking down, kind of like, as simple as he puts it, is really just a separation of consciousness from the body. Many times it happens when there is trauma. That's what we hear about these near-death experiences. There's another woman who had a very similar experience who was introduced kind of to the world stage. Her name is Anita Moorjani, and she wrote a book, Dying to Be Me. And she talks about having this spontaneous experience like you did, Jay. And it was at that moment that she knew when she came back that she was going to be healed. Nobody believed her. And within rapid fire time frame, her healing took place. So much so that many doctors around the world, a lot of her account has been written about and verified by doctors who say, based on the organ failure and the shutdown that she had, she was only hours away from death and had this experience. So, gosh, I think there's a lot of people, I don't know if it was scary for you, but it sounds like an amazing, I can't say what it was for you, maybe you can share on the comments, but it sounds like an amazing opportunity to have come back. This is really huge, and we'd love to hear more.
Could I jump in?
Yes.
Healing is an amazing thing. Well, you could take up another hour. But Jay, in your case, what you experienced is not much different than like my dad when he described his situation of his life flashing before his eyes. Now, basically, you adjusted in your spiritual self to detach yourself from the limits of the physical body in the midst of your dream. I believe that dreaming is very much a channel, a vessel, a vehicle, and a way for our consciousness to be in touch with our higher selves. So
Yes.
it's you find yourself flying in your dreams or teleporting. All of a sudden you were there, and now you're there, and is not limited to anything but whatever you're thinking right in the midst of your dream. But another thing is, life is something enhanced with a concept that we all attribute to God giving us, and that is free will. And why would he give us free will if there was no power in free will? But in the midst of your dream, you turned towards the positive, the essence of life. And that was your choice. So in the midst of your free will, you chose to live. And I think that that's the only way we're here in the first place. So to me, there's a lot of validity to your dream, whether it's syndicated so that a human mind can assimilate it and express it or not. It doesn't matter. You did this thing in the sensory of your consciousness that allowed you to live. Because ask and it is given. We are given heaven on earth, and we're just not necessarily making the best use of it. But the free will issue is if we want to manifest sickness, conflict, and poverty, God says, okay, you can do that. That's the way the universe is designed. However, you chose life, you chose goodness, and you found yourself still here. So I think that that's a decision you made. I think it's a decision that we all make.
And Rachel, do you have any comments for Jay?
Yeah, I'll just add one thing really, and that is you don't need to pair together this amazing experience with religion per se. So you mentioned that you're not really a religious person, and that doesn't need to change. There is, of course, many people use the word God and faith when it comes to like organized religion, but in my view, they're very separate. And I see myself as a big spiritual being that is connected to all that is, or source, or God. But I am my own sovereign being apart from any kind of organization of people here on earth and rules and all that kind of thing. So like Roland was saying, how you're connected to your higher self, and that goes beyond your body. That's really what I would focus on if you're looking to get more information on what happened to you, is look for words more like higher self or consciousness, out-of-body experience, rather than thinking you have to now like go to church in order to find out what happened.
Very well said. Very well said.
Completely wraps it up. Yeah, that was good.
Very much.
All right. Well, talking about wrapping it up, we're almost 45 minutes in. Do you guys have any parting comments on death? And then also, before you go, I'd really like for each of you to share with our viewers how they can get in touch with you. You've shared a lot, and you're both absolutely wonderful people who I follow, and I'm deeply honored to have you both on our show. So thank you for coming.
Go ahead, Rachel. You'd like to take the...
Sure. So, parting words, everyone's going to have their own feelings and experience about death just based on how you grew up looking at it, what you experienced in your life with your friends and family, what spiritual views you have, and just honor whatever feels good to you. You don't have to believe any certain thing, and this is not something that necessarily comes with like hit you over the head yes or no answer. This is a really subtle realm, and you'll often just find yourself having tiny little feelings of maybe we don't just lights out die. Maybe there's a little bit more. So allow yourself to have that subtle experience and subtle intuition when it comes to exploring death. And I do teach a way to communicate with loved ones after they're passed through intuitive art. It's very gentle. It's not scary at all. So if you want to take a free class, you can do that at intuitiveart.com. And thanks for having me. This has been really great.
Great conversation.
Awesome. Rachel, do you have, I know the last time I was with you on a hangout, you showed an example of an intuitive art. Do you have a piece handy, or could you grab one? Because I know some people think art, I can't do art, it's not going to work for me. Perfect. That's what we needed. Thank you.
Yeah, it's scribbles. And then you learn how to read the scribbles.
That's wonderful. And Roland.
I just want to talk to Rachel. She's cool.
She is cool.
You can get in touch with me relative to this show, especially if you're inclined to watch the show and then want to get in touch with me because of what I said today. The best way to do it is to hashtag search for what is the positive with no question mark. What is the positive is the new hashtag related to my search for self and expression. And we're asking all the time, well, no matter what situation you're in, what is the positive? What is the positive from wherever you are? Because if you're going to go on living, you got to take a step in the future, and you got to find something positive to step towards. So, as a basic hope for future life and to step forward, that's how you can find me. And life is an ingenious creation by something greater than us. And if you don't believe that, well then, just do the best you can and have fun while you're at it. Rachel said something earlier and said, do what feels good. You turn towards what feels good. Trust yourself. And basically, if you follow that alone, your life is going to be pretty good. But it's when we start dropping into with the negatives and the worries and the angers and the fears, that's when we start fouling it up. So as a basic positive and negative, be positive, be an optimist, and that's going to really pay off in your life.
So good. Wonderful comments from each of you. And you got to think that there's something going on, that thing that we're talking about, that kind of filmy essence of the spirituality, because we've got to plug into something. We're this little self-contained energy pack. We don't plug into the wall at night. We don't have to wear a battery pack or something like that. So we must be tapping into something to be this spiritual essence and being that we are. We're not just a breathing bunch of protoplasm. So really neat stuff to explore. That's right.
Evidence.
There we go. There we go. I know. If I get too far from the wall, then I just all of a sudden fall apart. I stop. I have an off button. My husband wishes there was an off button sometimes, but anyway. Great to have you guys. I'm Patty Burgess with DoingDeathDifferently.com and TeachingTransitions.com. And please do follow us on the Death Chicks. We've got our hospice series ready to be coming out shortly, where we interview different hospice interdisciplinary team members so that people cannot be so afraid of the H word, hospice. It's a wonderful service, and we want you to know more. Misty?
Thanks, Patty. So one of our viewers shared something, and I think it's great to go out on. If anyone wants to contact me, I'm at bittersweetblessing.com. So here's Carmen Mandich's what she shared. She says, my mom arrived to the hospital dead. Her heart had stopped, and she was revived with a shot to the heart. I'm assuming they, used those things. Did their magic. Interesting.
Magic
so she says, when she awoke, after 3 days in a coma, the first words to her doctor was, "Why did you give me a shot in the heart and bring me back? I liked where I was."
That interesting.
So anyhow, I think that kind of sums it up. Both of our panelists, and have shared that we don't have to fear it. So I'm Misty Lynn with co-host Patty Burgess. We're the Death Chicks. If you like what you've seen, please follow us and share around with your friends. All right, everyone. Bye for now. Last thing. February is our big question series. We're going to have panelists. We may have people jumping into the show. It's a little more of a different format than what we're used to, but this is a great opportunity in February to get to know us and start exploring death. It's not dark. It's fun. We can do it. Okay, that's all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye, everyone.